My sister abandoned her son 10 years ago, leaving him on my doorstep with nothing but a dirty diaper and a sticky note. I raised him alone on a nurse's salary, sacrificing my 20s to buy his asthma medication. At 16, he built a $4.2 million app on a cracked iPad. Then she came back. She pulled up in a Porsche with a high-powered lawyer claiming his money in custody. I panicked. Our lawyer said we might lose everything because I never legally adopted him. But my nephew just calmly whispered, "Let her talk, auntie, she has no idea what she just walked into." My name is Jasmine, and at 35 years old, I feel like I have lived 3 lifetimes. Most women my age are worrying about wrinkles or dating apps, but I spend my nights worrying about dialysis machines and electricity bills. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to sacrifice your dreams for family who did not appreciate it. The rhythmic beeping of the dialysis machines is the only music I have known for a decade. It was 5:30 in the morning at the Atlanta Community Clinic, and the smell of antiseptic could not quite cover the scent of bodily fluids. My back screamed in protest as I bent down to clean up the floor next to Mr. Henderson's chair. He was 80 years old and confused, apologizing profusely for the mess, but I simply patted his hand and told him it was okay. I stripped off my latex gloves and threw them into the biohazard bin with a heavy sigh that rattled in my chest. My shift had technically ended 30 minutes ago, but we were short-staffed as always. I caught my reflection in the dark window of the clinic entrance. The woman staring back at me did not look 35. She looked 50. There were deep purple bags under my eyes that no amount of drugstore concealer could hide, and my hair was pulled back in a messy bun that hadn't been washed in 2 days. I walked to the locker room and opened my purse. My hands trembled slightly from low blood sugar as I pulled out my wallet. I did not need to count the bills to know what was in there, but I did it anyway just to punish myself. Two $10 bills and one 20, $40. That was all I had to last me and a growing teenage boy until next Friday. I walked out into the humid Atlanta morning air. The parking lot was empty except for my silver 2010 Honda Civic. The clear coat was peeling off the hood like sunburned skin, revealing the gray metal beneath. I got in and turned the key. The engine sputtered and coughed a dry hacking sound that made my stomach tighten into a knot. "Please do not die on me today," I whispered to the dashboard, petting the steering wheel like it was a living thing. Finally, it roared to life with a rattle that shook the entire frame. As I pulled out onto the highway, my phone buzzed on the passenger seat. I glanced at the screen and felt a cold stone drop into my gut. It was a text from my landlord, Mr. Lowry. "Rent is going up $150 next month. Market rates are rising in Decatur. If you cannot pay, let me know by the 1st so I can list the unit." Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them away aggressively. I did not have the luxury of crying. Crying would not pay the rent. Crying would not fix the transmission that slipped every time I went over 40 miles per hour. I thought about the last 10 years as I drove. When I was 25, I had a full scholarship to nursing school in Chicago. I had a boyfriend named Marcus who wanted to travel the world with me. Then one morning I opened my door and found a baby carrier. Bianca, my younger sister, had left Devin there. She left a note saying she was too young and too beautiful to be tied down. She went to Hollywood to be a star. I stayed in Atlanta. I dropped out of the full-time program and took night shifts to pay for formula. I lost Marcus. I lost my 20s. And now at 35, I was about to lose my apartment. I pulled into the driveway of our small duplex. The grass was overgrown because the lawnmower had broken 2 weeks ago, and I could not afford the repair part. I took a deep breath, putting on my brave face before unlocking the door. I could not let Devin see me scared. He was a good kid, a quiet kid. He spent all his time on the computer I bought him from a pawn shop 3 years ago. "Devin," I called out, dropping my keys in the bowl. I brought some leftover sandwiches from the clinic cafeteria. Devin was sitting at the small kitchen table. He was wearing the same oversized gray hoodie he always wore to hide his skinny frame. In front of him was his iPad. The screen was cracked in the corner, a spider web of glass that I had promised to fix 6 months ago but never had the money for. He did not look up when I came in. He just stared at the screen, his eyes moving rapidly behind his thick glasses. "Dee," he said quietly, using the nickname he had given me when he was a toddler. "You need to quit your job." I laughed, a dry, humorless sound as I kicked off my shoes. "I wish I could baby, but Mr. Lowry just raised the rent. We might have to move to the smaller apartment complex on the south side." "No, Dee, listen to me." Devin stood up. He was tall for 16, lanky and awkward. He turned the iPad around so I could see it. "Read this." I squinted at the bright screen. It was an email. The logo at the top was a blue globe, Tech Global Ventures. I scanned the text, but the words blurred together until I saw the numbers. They were bolded in the middle of the paragraph. "We are pleased to confirm the acquisition of the Edu Connect platform. Total valuation, $4.2 million. I stared at the number. The zeros seemed to dance on the cracked screen, mocking me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, $4,200,000. Devin. I sighed, rubbing my temples where a headache was forming. "Baby, I told you not to click on those spam links. Nobody is giving away $4 million. It is a scam. They just want your social security number so they can steal your identity." "It is not a scam, Dee." Devin's voice was steady. He tapped the screen, opening a banking app. "Look at the pending transfer." I looked. There it was. A pending deposit from Tech Global Escrow Services. The amount was so large it did not fit on one line. "I built it for the kids at school," Devin explained softly. "You know how Tyrell failed math because his mom could not afford a tutor. I wrote a code that connects college students who need volunteer hours with high schoolers who need help. Tech Global liked the algorithm. They bought it, Dee. It is real." My knees gave out. I collapsed onto one of the mismatched kitchen chairs. I looked at my hands. These hands had changed thousands of diapers. These hands had scrubbed floors. These hands had counted pennies for 10 years. $4 million, I whispered. The fear hit me before the joy. It was a terrifying amount of money. It was enough money to fix the car, enough to buy the apartment complex, enough to make all the pain go away. But it was also enough to destroy us. "We have to be careful, Devin," I said, my voice trembling. "Nobody can know. If people find out we have this kind of money, dangerous people will come. We are just two people in a duplex. We are targets." Devin nodded. "I know, Dee. I only told you. I want to buy you a house. One with a garden so you do not have to work nights anymore." Tears finally spilled over my cheeks. I reached out and grabbed his hand. His fingers were long and slender, not rough and calloused like mine. "I did not save you, Devin," I sobbed. "You saved me." "You?" We sat there in the silence of the kitchen, the cracked iPad glowing between us like a holy grail. For the first time in 10 years, I felt the heavy weight on my shoulders lift just a fraction. I thought about the $40 in my wallet and almost laughed. We were going to be okay. Then we heard it. The sound of an engine outside, not the sputtering cough of my Honda or the heavy rumble of the neighbor's truck. This was a low, powerful purr, a sound that smelled like money. I wiped my eyes and stood up, walking to the front window. I pulled back the cheap yellow curtain and looked out. Parked right behind my rusted Civic was a car that looked like a spaceship. It was a black Porsche Cayenne, brand new and gleaming under the morning sun. The windows were tinted dark so I could not see inside. "Who is that?" Devin asked, coming up behind me. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine, a primal warning that danger was near. I watched as the driver's door opened. A man stepped out. He was older, white, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. He adjusted his silk tie and walked around to the passenger side. He opened the door, and a woman stepped out. I stopped breathing. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a white designer jumpsuit that looked ridiculous on our cracked sidewalk. Her hair was perfectly styled in beach waves. She looked at our peeling front door and wrinkled her nose in disgust. Then she took off her sunglasses and looked right at the window where I was standing. Even from this distance, I could see the blue eyes that matched Devon's. "It cannot be," I whispered. The woman walked up the path, her high heels clicking loudly on the concrete. She did not look like the scared 22-year-old who had run away 10 years ago. She looked like a predator. The doorbell rang. It was not a polite ring. It was a long, demanding press that echoed through the small house. I turned to Devon. "Go to your room. Take the iPad. Do not come out until I tell you." Bianca stepped into our living room, and suddenly the small space felt microscopic. She was followed closely by the man in the suit, whose name I would soon learn was Todd. The air in our duplex changed instantly. The familiar scent of lemon pledge and old carpet was violently replaced by a cloud of heavy floral perfume and expensive cologne. It was the smell of money, aggressive and suffocating. Bianca looked around the room, her eyes lingering on the water stain on the ceiling and the mismatched throw pillows I had bought from a thrift store. She did not say a word, but her expression screamed judgment. She looked like a swan that had been forced to land in a muddy puddle. Devon was still standing by the kitchen table, holding his cracked iPad against his chest like a shield. He looked terrified. Not the kind of terrified you feel when you see a monster, but the kind you feel when a stranger tries to touch you. And that is exactly what happened. Before I could even move, Bianca lunged forward. "Oh, my sweet baby boy," she cried out, her voice cracking with an emotion that sounded rehearsed. She threw her arms around Devon, burying her face in his gray hoodie. I saw Devon stiffen. His arms stayed glued to his sides. He did not hug her back. He looked over her shoulder at me, his eyes wide with panic behind his thick glasses. It was a violation. She was touching him with hands that had not held him since he was 6 years old. "I missed you so much," she sobbed, pulling back to look at his face. "Look at you. You are so tall. You look just like me. I am so sorry, Devon. I am so sorry I lost you." That word hit me like a physical slap. Lost. I stepped forward and gripped Bianca's shoulder, pulling her back with a force that surprised even me. "Get your hands off him," I said, my voice low and shaking with rage. "You did not lose him, Bianca. You did not misplace him like a set of car keys or a pair of sunglasses. You left him." Bianca stumbled back into Todd, who caught her by the elbow. She smoothed down the front of her white jumpsuit, her face twisting into a scowl. "Do not be dramatic, Jasmine," she snapped. "I was a child myself. I was 22 years old. I was suffering from severe postpartum depression. I was confused and I was scared. I did not abandon him. I left him with his family because I needed to heal." "Heal," I repeated incredulously. "You left him at a fire station, Bianca. You did not leave him with me. You left him at a fire station with a note pinned to his blanket. The firefighters had to call social services. I had to fight for 6 months to get him out of foster care because you disappeared off the face of the earth." Todd cleared his throat. It was a sharp, authoritative sound that cut through our argument. He stepped forward, placing himself between me and my sister. He was tall, with gray hair and cold eyes that assessed everything in the room with the detachment of a shark looking at a wounded seal. "Let us calm down," he said, his voice smooth and condescending. "I am Todd, Bianca husband, and we are not here to rehash ancient history, Jasmine. We are here because we care. We are here because we saw the news." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a gold-embossed business card. He placed it gently on our scratched coffee table. It landed with a soft thud that sounded louder than a gunshot in the quiet room. We read the press release about Tech Global. Todd continued. $4.2 million. That is a significant achievement for a young man. Congratulations, Devon. Devon did not answer. He just tightened his grip on the iPad. However, Todd turned his gaze to me and his smile did not reach his eyes. A sum of that magnitude creates complications. Legal complications, tax implications, management fees. It requires a level of sophistication that, quite frankly, this environment does not suggest. He gestured vaguely at my peeling walls and the worn-out linoleum floor. What are you saying? I asked, feeling my heart hammer against my ribs. I am saying that a minor cannot legally manage $4 million, Todd said. He needs a guardian with financial experience, a guardian who can protect his interests. I am his guardian, I said, stepping in front of Devon. I have raised him for 10 years. I sign his report cards. I pay for his asthma inhalers. I am the only mother he knows. But you never adopted him, did you? Todd asked softly. The question hung in the air, sucking the oxygen out of the room. I felt the blood drain from my face. It is a matter of public record, Jasmine, Todd said, shrugging slightly. We checked before we came. You have kinship care. You have physical custody. But you never terminated Bianca parental rights. You never finalized an adoption. I did not have the money, I whispered. And Bianca refused to sign the papers. Exactly, Todd said. Which means legally Bianca is still his mother. She still has rights. And now that she is financially stable and mentally recovered, she wants to exercise those rights. Bianca stepped forward again. She had stopped crying. The tears had vanished as quickly as they had appeared. Now she looked at Devon with a hungry intensity. I want to make it up to you, Devon, she said. Look at this place. It is a rat hole. There is mold in the corners. I saw your car outside Jasmine. It looks like it is about to explode. Is this the life you want for my son? I give him love, I said, my voice trembling. I give him a home. You give him poverty, Bianca spat back. I can give him the world. We have a house in Buckhead. We have a pool. We have connections. Tech Global is great, but with Todd help, that 4 million could be 40 million in 5 years. Or it could disappear if it is managed by a nurse who barely makes minimum wage. She turned to Devon. Pack your bags, Devon, she said, her voice leaving no room for argument. What? I gasped. You cannot just take him. Watch me, Bianca said, crossing her arms. I am his mother. I have the birth certificate. I have the lawyer. And you, Jasmine, you have nothing. You are essentially a babysitter who has overstayed her welcome. She looked at her diamond-encrusted watch. We have a dinner reservation at 7. Devon, go get your things. Do not bring the clothes, they look like rags. Just bring your laptop and that iPad. We will buy you a whole new wardrobe tomorrow. Devon looked at me. His eyes were terrified, pleading with me to do something. But I was frozen. The logic of the law, the weight of their wealth, and the sudden violence of their return had paralyzed me. I stood there in my nursing scrubs, smelling of antiseptic and exhaustion, while my sister in her designer jumpsuit dismantled my entire world in less than 5 minutes. I am taking my son home, Bianca said, reaching for Devon's arm again. Right now. And Jasmine, if you try to stop us, Todd will have the police here for kidnapping charges faster than you can blink. So be a good sister and step aside. Get out of my house. The words tore out of my throat, raw and desperate. I pointed a trembling finger at the door, my other hand still shielding Devon, who was pressed against the kitchen wall. Get out before I call the police. Todd did not flinch. He did not look angry. He simply reached into the breast pocket of his expensive Italian suit and pulled out the latest model iPhone. He looked at me with a pitying smile that made my skin crawl. That will not be necessary, Jasmine, he said calmly, unlocking his screen. I will save you the trouble. He tapped the screen 3 times and put the phone to his ear. I watched in horror as his voice changed instantly. Gone was the arrogant lawyer. In his place was a concerned, terrified citizen. Yes, hello, 911. I need an officer at 42 Maple Street immediately. Yes, I am here with my wife. We are attempting to retrieve her minor son from a relative who is refusing to release him. The relative is acting erratic. She is screaming. We are concerned for the child's safety. Yes, she is becoming aggressive. Please hurry. He hung up and slid the phone back into his pocket. Bianca was checking her reflection in the hallway mirror, adjusting a strand of hair that was already perfect. You are a monster, I whispered. No, Jasmine, Todd said, smoothing his tie. I am a lawyer. And you are about to learn the difference between being a mother and just playing house. The next 10 minutes were the longest of my life. Devin did not move. He stood frozen by the refrigerator, his eyes darting between me and the door. I wanted to hug him to tell him it would be okay, but I was afraid that if I moved, Todd would twist it into something violent. So we stood in silence. The only sound was the humming of the old refrigerator and the distant siren that was getting louder and louder. When the red and blue lights flashed through our thin curtains, my heart stopped. Two officers walked up the path. One was older with a tired face, the other looked like a rookie. Todd opened the door before they could knock. "Thank God you are here, officers," he said, extending a hand. "I am Todd Harrison. This is my wife, Bianca. We are the parents." The older officer looked around the room, taking in the scene. Me in my scrubs looking disheveled and exhausted, Devin in his hoodie looking terrified, and Todd and Bianca looking like they had just stepped out of a magazine photo shoot. "What seems to be the problem here?" the officer asked. "This woman," Todd pointed a manicured finger at me. "This woman is refusing to return our son to our custody. We came here peacefully to discuss a transition plan, but she became violent. She threatened us." "That is a lie," I screamed, stepping forward. The rookie officer put a hand on his holster, and I froze. "Ma'am, step back," the older officer said firmly. "Officer, please," I said, my voice shaking. "Do not listen to him. She abandoned this boy 10 years ago. She left him on this doorstep in a baby carrier. I have raised him. I have fed him. I am his mother." The officer looked at Bianca. "Is this true, ma'am?" Bianca let out a small, orchestrated sob and leaned into Todd. "I was young, officer. I was sick. I asked my sister to watch him until I got better. But when I came back, she wouldn't let me see him. She kept him from me. And now that I am well, I just want my baby back." "She is lying," I yelled. "Ask the neighbors. Ask the school. She hasn't called in 10 years. She doesn't even know his middle name." Todd reached into a leather briefcase he had brought in. "Officer, we can argue about feelings all day, but the law deals in facts. Here is Devin's birth certificate. Mother Bianca Miller, father unknown. And here is a copy of the state custody records." The officer took the papers. He adjusted his glasses and read them under the dim light of my hallway. He flipped through the pages. Then he looked up at me. "Ma'am, do you have any adoption papers? Do you have a court order granting you permanent legal guardianship?" I felt the floor drop out from under me. I have kinship care papers," I stammered. "From when he was 6. The social worker said." "Do you have a finalized adoption decree?" the officer interrupted. "No," I whispered. "Lawyers cost $5,000. I didn't have the money. And she—" I pointed at Bianca. "She wouldn't sign the termination of rights. She said she would come back in a few months. I trusted her. She is my sister. The officer sighed. He handed the papers back to Todd. He looked at me with genuine sympathy, but I knew what was coming. "Ma'am, without a court order stripping the biological mother of her rights, she is the legal guardian. Technically, you are holding the child without consent. But he lives here," I pleaded. "His school is here. His life is here. You can't just let strangers take him." "They are not strangers, ma'am," the officer said gently. "According to the state of Georgia, they are his parents." Todd leaned in close to the officer. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, but loud enough for me to hear. "Officer, look at her. She is hysterical. We believe she is having a breakdown. We also have reason to believe she is trying to access the boy's financial accounts. He recently came into a small inheritance, and suddenly she is very possessive. We are worried she might flee the state with him." My blood ran cold. He was twisting everything. He was taking my love, my protection, and painting it as greed and insanity. "I am not stealing anything," I cried. "I am a nurse. I save lives." Officer Todd said, his voice hardening. "If she does not release the boy, we would like to press charges for custodial interference. In this state, that is a felony. It is considered kidnapping." The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Kidnapping. I looked at Devin. He was shaking. If I went to jail tonight, Devin would go with them anyway, and I would have a criminal record. I would lose my nursing license. I would lose any chance of fighting for him in the future. The officer looked at me. "Ma'am, I do not want to arrest you tonight, but you have to cooperate. If you do not have legal paperwork, I cannot stop them from taking their son." Todd smiled. A shark sensing blood. "However, officer," he said, "we do not want to traumatize the boy tonight. We are reasonable people. We are willing to let him stay here one more night to pack his things. But we want a court summons issued immediately. We want a hearing next week to formalize the transfer of custody." The officer nodded. "That seems like a fair compromise." He pulled out his notepad and wrote something down, tearing off a yellow slip of paper. He handed it to me. "Jasmine Miller, you are hereby summoned to the Fulton County Family Court next Tuesday at 9 a.m. regarding the petition for custody of Devin Miller. Do not miss this date, or a warrant will be issued for your arrest." I took the paper. It felt heavy in my hand. Todd buttoned his jacket. He looked at Devin. "See you soon, son. Make sure you pack the iPad. We have big plans for that." Bianca blew a kiss to Devin, a gesture that looked as natural as a snake trying to fly. "Bye, baby, mommy loves you." They turned and walked out the door. The police officers followed them, leaving me standing in the center of my living room, holding a piece of yellow paper that felt like a death sentence. The red and blue lights faded as they drove away, leaving us in the darkness of the duplex. I looked at Devin. He walked over to me slowly. "Dee Dee," he whispered, "are they going to take me to jail?" "No, baby," I said, pulling him into a hug so tight I thought I might break his ribs. "No. But we are going to war. And I don't know if we have enough ammunition to win." The next morning, the air in the Atlanta Community Clinic felt different. Usually the break room was filled with the smell of stale coffee and the chatter of nurses complaining about their aching feet, but today it was silent. When I walked in, conversation stopped abruptly. My coworkers, people I had shared lunches and birthdays with for 5 years, looked down at their shoes, or suddenly became very interested in their clipboards. I felt a cold prickle of unease crawl up my neck. I walked to my locker and reached for my scrubs, but before I could open the metal door, Mrs. Higgins, the clinic administrator, appeared. She did not smile. "Jasmine," she said, her voice tight and formal, "can you please step into my office? We need to talk." My stomach dropped. I followed her down the hallway, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on my back. Mrs. Higgins closed the door and sat behind her desk. She did not offer me a seat. She simply turned her computer monitor around so I could see the screen. It was paused on a video. The title read, "Heartbroken Mother Fights to Reclaim Son from Abusive Sister." The thumbnail was a close-up of Bianca's face, tear-streaked and perfectly lit. Mrs. Higgins pressed play. I watched in horror as my sister performed the greatest acting role of her life. She was sitting on a beige sofa in what looked like a therapist office holding a tissue. "I was 22, she said, her voice trembling. "I was suffering from severe postpartum psychosis. I didn't know who I was. I asked my sister Jasmine for help. I asked her to watch my baby for a few weeks while I sought treatment. But when I came back, she refused to open the door. She told me I was unfit. She told me if I ever came back, she would call the police. She took advantage of my mental illness to steal my son." "Liar," I whispered at the screen, my hands balling into fists. "She is lying. She left him at a fire station. There is a police report." Mrs. Higgins paused the video. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and disappointment. "Jasmine, this video has 2 million views. It is trending on Twitter. People are calling the clinic. They are leaving 1-star reviews saying we employ a kidnapper. We have reporters camped out in the parking lot." "But it is not true," I pleaded, tears stinging my eyes. "You know me. You know I have raised Devin alone. I know what I see on the news," Mrs. Higgins said. "And right now, the narrative is that you are keeping a mother from her child. The board is worried about liability. We handle vulnerable patients, Jasmine. We cannot have this kind of controversy attached to our brand." She slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was a suspension notice. "We are placing you on administrative leave without pay pending the investigation," Mrs. Higgins said. "Please hand over your badge." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Without pay. That meant $0. That meant the $40 in my wallet was all I had left in the world. I slowly unclipped my badge, the plastic rectangle that identified me as a healer, a helper, a productive member of society. I placed it on the desk. It felt like I was handing over my identity. I walked out of the clinic through the back exit to avoid the reporters. I sat in my car and turned on my phone. I had turned it off the night before to save battery. Immediately it began to buzz and ping like an angry hornet nest. Hundreds of notifications, strangers on Facebook sending me messages. "You are a monster, give the boy back." "Thief, kidnapper." Bianca had not just told a lie, she had weaponized the internet against me. She had turned the world into a jury, and they had already delivered the verdict. I drove home in a daze. Every car that passed me felt like a threat. Every person walking on the sidewalk looked like an enemy. When I got to the duplex, I locked the door and pulled the curtains tight. The house felt smaller than ever. It felt like a cage. I sat on the floor in the dark, trying to calculate how many days we could survive on peanut butter sandwiches and tap water. Then the front door rattled. I jumped, my heart hammering. But it was just the key turning in the lock. Devin walked in. I gasped. My sweet, quiet boy looked like he had been in a war zone. His gray hoodie was torn at the shoulder. His glasses were bent, sitting crooked on his nose, and his left eye was swelling shut, turning a sickening shade of purple and black. "Devin!" I screamed, scrambling to my feet. "Oh my God, baby, what happened?" I ran to the kitchen to get ice. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped the tray on the floor. I grabbed a bag of frozen peas and rushed back to him. I pressed it gently against his eye. He winced but did not pull away. "Who did this to you?" I asked, my voice trembling with rage. "Tell me who did this." "It was Tyrell," Devin mumbled, looking at the floor. "Tyrell," I repeated. "Tyrell, your best friend. The boy you built the app for. The boy you helped pass math." "He saw the video," Devin said quietly. "He said his mom showed him. He said you are a kidnapper, Dee Dee. He said you stole me, and that I should be grateful my real mom wants me back." I told him to shut up. He pushed me. I pushed back. "You fought him?" I asked, tears streaming down my face. "Devin, you never fight. You are a pacifist." "I couldn't let him say that about you," Devin said, looking up at me with his one good eye. "You are not a kidnapper. You are my mom." I told him that. I told him my mom is a hero. I pulled him into my arms and wept. I cried for his bruised face. I cried for his lost innocence. I cried because my love for him was the very thing that was destroying his life. Bianca and Todd were not just attacking me. They were turning his own world against him. They were isolating us, cutting off our lifelines one by one. My phone buzzed again on the floor. I ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Finally, I picked it up. It was a text from an unknown number. I opened it. It was a photo. A screenshot of a legal document drafted on heavy letterhead. Below it was a message from Todd. "Jasmine," the text read, "I see you lost your job today. Tragic. This does not have to get uglier. We can make the criminal charges go away. We can make the internet hate go away. All you have to do is sign the voluntary surrender of custody forms attached to this email. Give us the boy and transfer the administrative rights to his trust fund by tomorrow morning, and we will drop the kidnapping lawsuit. If you refuse, we will see you in court on Tuesday, and I promise you will leave that courtroom in handcuffs." I looked at the text, then I looked at Devin. He was sitting on the couch holding the frozen peas to his eye, staring blankly at the wall. He looked so small, so defeated. They had taken my job. They had taken my reputation. They had taken my safety. And now they were holding my freedom hostage. I realized then that I was not fighting a family dispute. I was fighting a corporate takeover, and I was the hostile element that needed to be liquidated. Dee Dee Devon asked, softly breaking the silence. Are we going to lose? I looked at the message from Todd one last time. The cursor blinked next to the reply button. I wiped my face and stood up. I walked over to the window and peered through the crack in the curtains at the street where a black sedan had been parked for the last hour. No baby. I said, my voice cold and steady. We are not going to lose. But we are done playing by their rules. I went to the kitchen drawer and pulled out the old laptop I used for work. I blew the dust off the keyboard. Devon, I said. You told me that app is worth $4 million because of the code, right? Because of the back-end security. Yeah, Devon said, confused. Why? Because I need to know if you can break into something, I said. Todd sent me an email. And I think it is time we find out what else he is hiding in his digital closet. If they want to paint me as a criminal, let us show them what a real crime looks like. The fluorescent lights of the Fulton County Family Court hummed with a low, headache-inducing buzz that seemed to vibrate right through my bones. I sat at the defendant's table, clutching my purse so tightly my knuckles had turned white. Next to me sat Mr. Henderson, a public defender with coffee stains on his tie, and a stack of files so high I wondered how he found the time to sleep. He had met me exactly 5 minutes before the hearing began. He did not know Devon's favorite color. He did not know about the asthma attacks. He did not know that I was the one who taught Devon how to tie his shoes. To Mr. Henderson, I was just case number 4 of 12 for the day. Across the aisle, the scene looked like a corporate boardroom meeting. Todd sat relaxed and confident in a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly. He was flanked by 2 junior associates who were busy organizing binders of evidence on the mahogany table. Bianca sat next to him wearing a modest navy blue dress and pearl earrings. She looked the picture of maternal repentance, she dabbing at dry eyes with a silk handkerchief every time the judge looked her way. They looked like a family. We looked like a charity case. All rise, the bailiff announced, and my heart hammered against my ribs as Judge Reynolds swept into the room. He was an older man with stern reading glasses and a face that suggested he had no patience for emotional outbursts. I felt a sinking sensation in my stomach. Judge Reynolds and Todd probably belonged to the same country club. They probably drank the same scotch. The hearing began and it was a massacre. Todd stood up first. He did not raise his voice. He did not point fingers. He spoke with a gentle, patronizing tone that was far more dangerous than any shout. Your Honor. Todd began pacing slowly before the bench. We are not here to villainize Ms. Miller. We acknowledge that she stepped in when my wife was suffering from a debilitating mental health crisis. For that, we are grateful. He paused, letting the gratitude hang in the air before pulling out a knife. However, we must look at the current reality. Ms. Miller has recently been suspended from her job at the clinic due to allegations of kidnapping. She has zero income. She lives in a rental property in Decatur, where the crime rate is 40% higher than the national average. Todd gestured to a large screen where photos of my duplex appeared. They had taken pictures of the peeling paint on the front door, the overgrown grass, the rusted Honda Civic in the driveway. Through their lens, my home did not look like a sanctuary, it looked like a slum. Then he clicked a button and the screen changed. Photos of a sprawling estate appeared, a sparkling swimming pool, a private library, a bedroom with a view of the Atlanta skyline. Your Honor. Todd continued, Devon is a special young man, a genius. He has just acquired significant assets. Does he belong in an environment where he has to worry about eviction notices? Or does he belong in an environment that can nurture his gifts? My wife and I can offer him private tutoring, security, stability. We simply want to bring our son home. My lawyer stood up, but he lacked Todd's polish. He stuttered slightly, shuffling his papers. Your Honor, Ms. Miller has been the primary caregiver for 10 years. The child is bonded to her. Uprooting him would be traumatic. Judge Reynolds peered over his glasses, looking directly at me. Ms. Miller, is it true you are currently unemployed? I stood up, my legs feeling like jelly. I was suspended. Your Honor, because of a smear campaign launched by the plaintiffs. I am a head nurse. I work hard. But you have no income right now, the judge interrupted. No, Your Honor, I whispered. And you have no legal adoption decree. No, Your Honor. The judge sighed. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. He looked like a man who just wanted to get to his lunch break. In the eyes of the law, biological parents have a presumptive right to custody unless they are proven unfit, Judge Reynolds said. Mrs. Harrison has provided medical records showing she has recovered from her postpartum condition. She is married. She is financially stable. He banged his gavel and the sound echoed like a gunshot. I am granting a temporary custody order. In the interest of re-establishing the maternal bond, Devin Miller will reside with his biological mother and stepfather for a period of 2 weeks, starting immediately. A guardian ad litem will be appointed to assess the situation. We will reconvene in 14 days to make a final ruling. No, I gasped. Please, Your Honor. He doesn't know them. Order, the bailiff shouted, stepping toward me. I looked back at Devin. He was sitting on a bench in the back of the courtroom. He wasn't crying. He was just staring at his hands, picking at a loose thread on his hoodie. He looked so small, so resigned. The next 10 minutes were a blur of paperwork and instructions I could barely hear over the roaring in my ears. I was being erased. 10 years of love wiped away by a bank account balance and a birth certificate. We walked out of the courthouse into the blinding afternoon sun. A black SUV was waiting at the curb with the engine running. Bianca was already smiling, chatting with her lawyer as if they had just won a tennis match. Todd was checking his watch. Devin walked behind them, dragging his feet. He was carrying a small duffel bag I had packed for him just in case. Devin. I called out, my voice cracking. He stopped and turned to me. His eyes were red-rimmed behind his glasses. I ran to him, ignoring Todd's warning glare. I grabbed his shoulders, looking him up and down, trying to memorize his face. Listen to me, baby, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It is just 2 weeks. Just 14 days. I will fix this. I will get a new lawyer. I will sell the car. I will do whatever it takes. I know, Dee, Devin whispered. Suddenly I remembered. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small blue plastic inhaler. It was his albuterol. The seasons were changing and the pollen count in Atlanta was high. Take this, I said, pressing it into his hand. You know the drill. 2 puffs if your chest feels tight. Do not wait until you can't breathe, okay? And keep it by your bed. Devin nodded and reached for it. But before his fingers could close around the plastic, a hand snatched it away. Bianca stood there holding the inhaler with 2 fingers as if it were a dead cockroach. We do not need this, she said coldly. Bianca, please, I pleaded. He has asthma. If he has an attack at night? He has asthma because he lives in that dusty, moldy apartment with you, Bianca interrupted. Her blue eyes were like ice. My house has a central HEPA filtration system. The air quality is hospital grade. He won't need this cheap drugstore garbage. She turned and threw the inhaler toward a trash can near the curb. She missed. The blue plastic skittered across the concrete sidewalk and rolled into the gutter, disappearing into the darkness of the sewer grate. I gasped, lunging for it, but it was gone. You are crazy, I screamed. You are going to kill him. Get in the car, Devin, Todd barked, opening the back door of the SUV. Devin looked at the gutter, then at me. A single tear escaped from under his glasses, tracking through the dust on his cheek. Go, Todd ordered, pushing him gently but firmly by the shoulder. Devin climbed into the leather interior. He looked like an astronaut entering a hostile planet. The door slammed shut with a heavy, expensive thud that sealed him away from me. I ran to the window, pressing my palm against the glass. Devin, I mouthed, I love you. The window was tinted so dark I could barely see him, but I saw him lift his hand to wave. Then I heard the electric whir of the window motor. The black glass slid up, cutting off the last sliver of his face. The SUV pulled away, merging effortlessly into the Atlanta traffic. I stood there on the hot pavement, my hands still reaching out toward nothing. The exhaust fumes filled my lungs, and for a moment I couldn't breathe either. I felt the imaginary weight of an inhaler in my hand, and wished I could use it for myself. My knees hit the concrete. I didn't care who was watching. I didn't care about the stains on my pants. I collapsed right there in front of the courthouse, curling into myself as a guttural sob tore its way out of my chest. They had taken my boy. They had taken his medicine. And they had driven off into a world where I could not follow. I was 35 years old. I had $40 in my pocket. And I had just lost the only thing that made my heart beat. The black SUV glided through the wrought iron gates of an estate in Buckhead that looked more like a museum than a home. Devin sat in the back seat, silently gripping the handle of his duffel bag. The house was massive, a sprawling white mansion with columns that reached up to the sky and a fountain in the driveway that was larger than our entire apartment. But as Devin stepped out onto the polished marble driveway, he did not feel impressed. He felt cold. The air here was thin and sharp, and the house loomed over him like a white tomb. "Welcome home, son," Todd said, clapping a heavy hand on Devin's shoulder. He did not wait for a response before marching toward the double oak doors. A maid in a black and white uniform opened them, her face blank and unsmiling. She took Devin's bag without a word, as if he were a guest checking into a hotel rather than a family member returning home. Bianca grabbed Devin's hand and pulled him up the grand staircase. The stairs were made of floating glass and steel, terrifyingly modern and cold to the touch. "Come on, baby," she said, her heels clicking sharply on the steps. "Wait until you see your room. I had the interior designer redo it completely yesterday. It is perfect." She pushed open a door at the end of the long hallway. Devin stepped inside and stopped. The room was bigger than our entire living room and kitchen combined. It had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a swimming pool that glowed blue in the twilight. But what caught Devin's eye was the desk. Sitting on a sleek black table was a computer setup that most kids only dreamed of. An Alienware Aurora gaming tower humming with blue LED lights, 3 curved monitors, and a professional streaming microphone. Next to it on the bed lay piles of clothes, Gucci hoodies, Balenciaga sneakers, and designer jeans with price tags still attached. "Do you like it?" Bianca asked, watching his face closely for a reaction. "It is nice," Devin said, his voice quiet. "Nice," she laughed, a harsh, tinkling sound. "Baby, this is $5,000 worth of hardware. This is top of the line. Your Aunt Jasmine could work for 10 years and never afford the graphics card alone." She walked over to the bed and picked up one of the hoodies, holding it against him. "We are going to throw away those rags you are wearing," she said, wrinkling her nose at his gray sweatshirt. "You are a Miller now. You need to look like you come from success, not a charity ward. Forget about the poverty Jasmine dragged you through. That part of your life is over. This is your level now." She didn't ask him if he was hungry. She didn't ask him how he felt. She just wanted him to look the part. "Dinner is at 7. Todd called from the hallway. "We have guests coming. Wear the black shirt." That night, the house came alive with noise, but none of it was joyful. Downstairs in the grand salon, Todd and Bianca were hosting what they called a welcome home party, but it sounded more like a networking event. The bass of house music thumped through the floorboards, vibrating in Devin's chest. He lay in the massive bed staring at the ceiling. The central air conditioning was blasting, pumping dry, frigid air into the room. Devin felt the familiar tickle in his throat before the tightness set in. His lungs began to constrict, reacting to the stress and the dry, processed air of the mansion. He sat up instinctively, reaching for the nightstand where he always kept his inhaler. But his hand grasped only empty air. He remembered the blue plastic skittering across the sidewalk and falling into the gutter. Bianca had thrown it away. He tried to take a deep breath, but it felt like breathing through a coffee stirrer. A small wheeze escaped his lips. Panic, the enemy of every asthmatic, began to rise in his chest, making it even harder to breathe. He needed steam. He needed water. He swung his legs out of bed and stumbled toward the door. The hallway was empty, the white walls stretching out endlessly. He walked toward the stairs holding the railing to keep from falling. Below him he could see the party. Men in suits and women in cocktail dresses were laughing, holding crystal champagne flutes. Bianca was in the center of the room, wearing a shimmering gold dress, throwing her head back in laughter as she held court. "Mom," he tried to call out, but his voice was a whisper, a weak rasp that was swallowed by the music. He waved his hand, trying to catch her eye. Bianca looked up toward the landing. For a second their eyes met. Devin pointed to his chest, gasping. But Bianca just smiled, thinking he was waving goodnight. She blew him a kiss and turned back to pour more champagne for a wealthy investor. She did not see him. She only saw the trophy she had won. Devin stumbled back from the railing, his vision blurring at the edges. He needed to find a bathroom. He needed to turn on a hot shower and breathe the steam. He navigated down the hallway, opening doors randomly. He pushed open a heavy mahogany door, thinking it was a bathroom. It wasn't. It was Todd's study. The room was dark, lit only by the glow of a cigar tip and the screen of a laptop. Todd was there, but he wasn't alone. He was on the phone, pacing back and forth, his voice low and angry. Devin froze in the doorway, hidden by the shadows. "Listen to me, you bloodsucker," Todd hissed into the phone. "I told you Friday. The boy is here. He is upstairs right now." Devin held his breath, his lungs burning. "Yes, I have the papers drawn up." Todd continued, taking a drag of the cigar. "I just need to get him to sign the power of attorney. He is 16. He doesn't know a contract from a coloring book. Once I have control of the trust, I can wire you the 500,000. There was a pause as the person on the other end spoke. "Don't threaten me," Todd snapped. "You will get your money, and do not touch the boat. That yacht is the only thing I have left to leverage for the firm credit line. If you repo the boat before the deal closes, I am ruined." Todd turned toward the window, looking out at the dark grounds. "Bianca is doing her part," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "She is playing mommy dearest. God, it is pathetic watching her try to hug the kid. But she knows the stakes. If we don't get access to that 4 million by the end of the month, we lose the house. So yes, I will make him sign, even if I have to break his fingers to hold the pen." Devin backed away slowly. The wheezing in his chest had stopped, not because he could breathe, but because his heart had turned to ice. He did not go to the bathroom. He went back to his room and locked the door. He crawled into the massive cold bed and pulled the duvet over his head. He focused on taking shallow, controlled breaths, just like Jasmine had taught him. In through the nose, out through the mouth. He closed his eyes, but he didn't sleep. The tears that finally came were hot and silent. He wasn't a son. He wasn't a long-lost family member. He was a paycheck. He was a bailout. He was a walking, talking ATM machine that they needed to rob to save their vanity. He looked over at the Alienware computer humming with its blue lights. Bianca had called it a gift. Now he knew what it really was. It was a bribe. A shiny toy to distract him while they picked his pockets. Devin sat up and wiped his face. The panic was gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity that was far beyond his 16 years. He looked at the computer again. "You want my money?" he whispered to the empty room, his voice raspy but steady. "You want to use me for my code." He stood up and walked over to the desk. He sat down in the expensive leather gaming chair and wiggled the mouse. The screens woke up, casting a glow on his bruised face. "Okay, Todd," he said, cracking his knuckles. "Let us see how much you really know about computers." Devin began to type. The smell of Italian leather and premium tire rubber filled the air inside the McLaren dealership in Buckhead. It was a scent that whispered power. Todd walked through the showroom with the confidence of a man who owned the pavement he walked on. He guided Devin toward a sleek vehicle that sat on a rotating pedestal under spotlights. It was a McLaren 720S, painted a violent shade of volcano orange. The car looked fast even when it was standing still. It looked like a weapon. Todd placed a hand on the hood, feeling the cold, smooth metal. "Do you know what 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds feels like, Devin?" It feels like leaving the rest of the world behind. It feels like escape. Devin stood with his hands in the pockets of his new designer jeans. He looked at the car. It was beautiful. It was a machine of pure engineering perfection. "Do you like it?" Todd asked, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "It is incredible," Devin admitted, his voice quiet. "It is yours," Todd said simply. Devin looked up sharply. His eyes widened behind his glasses. "What?" "I said it is yours," Todd repeated, flashing a winning smile. "Well, technically, you cannot drive it legally without an adult until you are 18. But I can buy it under the trust. We can keep it in the garage. I will take you to the track on weekends. I will teach you how to handle a beast like this." He put an arm around Devin's shoulders, squeezing tight. "Listen, son, you have a gift. That code you wrote, that brain of yours, it deserves to be transported in something that matches its value. You shouldn't be riding the bus. You shouldn't be sitting in the passenger seat of a rusted Honda Civic that smells like bleach and despair." Devin stiffened slightly at the mention of Jasmine's car. "Your Aunt Jasmine," Todd continued, steering him away from the car and toward the exit. "She is a good woman. I truly believe that. But she has what we call a poverty mindset. She thinks small. She saves coupons. She worries about the electric bill. People like that, they fear success. They fear money because they don't understand it." Todd opened the door of his own car and they got in. The drive to Todd's law firm was short. They went up in a private elevator that opened directly into a corner office with a panoramic view of the Atlanta skyline. The city looked like a circuit board from up here, vast and glittering. Todd sat behind his massive mahogany desk and gestured for Devin to sit. He opened a laptop and turned the screen around. It was filled with colorful charts and graphs that trended upward. "This is what I do," Todd said. "I make money grow. If you leave that $4 million in a standard savings account like Jasmine would probably do, inflation will eat it alive. In 10 years, it will be worth half of what it is today." He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto Devin's. "Jasmine wants to protect you, Devin. But her version of protection is a cage. She wants to keep you in that duplex. She wants to keep you small. Because if you get big, if you get rich, if you drive a McLaren, then you don't need her anymore. And that terrifies her." Devin looked down at his hands. "Is that why she is fighting you?" Todd nodded slowly, his face a mask of fake sympathy. "Jealousy is an ugly thing, son, even among family, especially among family. She sees your mother and me, she sees this office, she sees the life we can give you, and she feels like a failure. So she tries to drag you down to her level. She tries to guilt trip you. She tries to make you feel bad for wanting nice things." He slid a thick document across the desk. "This is a management agreement," Todd said. "It simply gives me the authority to invest your funds, to buy the car, to pay for the best colleges, to make sure that by the time you are 21, you are not just a millionaire, you are a tycoon." Devin looked at the paper. The legal jargon was dense and confusing. "You don't have to sign it now," Todd said, pulling the paper back slightly. "Take it home, read it, think about the car, think about the freedom, think about whether you want to be a nurse scraping by or a king making moves." Later that afternoon, the sun beat down on the pavement outside of North Atlanta High School. The heat radiated off the asphalt in shimmering waves. I stood by the chain-link fence, sweat trickling down my back. I had been waiting for 45 minutes. My suspension from the clinic meant I had nowhere to be but here. I needed to see him. I needed to look into his eyes and remind him who he was. The final bell rang and the doors burst open. A flood of teenagers poured out, laughing and shouting. I scanned the crowd, searching for the familiar gray hoodie. Then I saw him. He was walking with a group of kids I didn't recognize. He wasn't wearing his hoodie. He was wearing a black designer t-shirt that fit him perfectly and expensive sneakers that looked brand new. He wasn't looking at the ground anymore. He was looking straight ahead. "Devin." I called out, waving my hand through the fence. "Devin, over here." He didn't turn. A large man in a polo shirt with the words security embroidered on the chest stepped in front of me. He was built like a linebacker and wore dark sunglasses. "Ma'am, you need to step back," he rumbled, crossing his massive arms. "I am his aunt," I said, trying to push past him. "I just want to say hello." "Devin. Devin, look at me." The security guard did not move. "Mr. Harrison has strict instructions, ma'am. No unauthorized contact. You are violating the temporary restraining order. Do I need to call the police again?" I ignored him. I jumped up, waving my arms. "Devin, please." Devin stopped. He was only 20 feet away. He turned his head slowly. The sun glinted off his glasses, hiding his eyes. He looked at me. He saw me standing there in my worn-out jeans and t-shirt, sweating and desperate, being held back by a hired goon. For a second I thought he would run to me. I thought he would drop his backpack and come back to the arms that had held him when he had chickenpox, the arms that had held him when he cried over his first heartbreak. But then a horn honked. The black SUV pulled up to the curb. The back door slid open automatically. Devin looked at the car. Then he looked back at me one last time. His expression was unreadable. It wasn't angry. It wasn't sad. It was cold. He turned his back on me. He walked to the car and climbed inside. The door closed with a soft, final click. The SUV pulled away, disappearing into the stream of traffic, leaving me clinging to the wire fence, my fingers bleeding from how hard I was gripping the metal. I slid down to the ground, sitting in the dirt outside the school. The students walked past me, whispering and staring, but I didn't care. Todd was right. I couldn't give him a McLaren. I couldn't give him a trust fund. I couldn't give him power. I had fought Bianca. I had fought the law. But today, I realized I was fighting something much stronger. I was fighting the seduction of a life I could never provide. I laid my head against the hot metal of the fence and closed my eyes. "They bought him," I whispered to the dust. "They finally bought him." The chandelier in the grand foyer was so bright it made my eyes water. Or maybe it was the smoke from the expensive cigars that Todd's business partners were puffing on like chimneys. It was the night before the final court hearing, and Todd had decided to throw what he called a celebration of excellence. But as I stood there in a stiff tuxedo that scratched my neck, I knew what it really was. It was a victory lap. Todd was parading me around like a prize poodle he had just bought at an auction. The house was filled with people I did not know, men in three-piece suits who looked at me with dollar signs in their eyes, and women in cocktail dresses who pinched my cheek and told me I was so lucky to have found my way home. I felt like an imposter. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. "Drink up, son," Todd boomed, appearing at my elbow. He pressed a heavy crystal glass into my hand. It was filled with an amber liquid that smelled like gasoline and oak. "I don't drink," I said, trying to hand it back. "I am 16. "Nonsense." Todd laughed, slapping my back so hard I stumbled. "This is a private party, and you are the man of the hour. Just a sip to calm the nerves. Tomorrow is a big day." He watched me with intense, predatory eyes. I lifted the glass to my lips and took a sip. The whiskey burned my throat like fire, making me cough. Todd grinned. "Good lad. It puts hair on your chest. Finish it. We have business to discuss." Over the next hour, Todd made sure my glass was never empty. The room began to swim. The faces of the guests blurred into a sea of fake smiles and glittering jewelry. I felt dizzy and disconnected, as if I were floating above my own body. My limbs felt heavy, and my thoughts were sluggish. "Come with me," Todd said, guiding me firmly by the arm. He steered me away from the noise of the party down the hallway and into his study. The sudden silence of the room was jarring. He closed the heavy door, locking out the music and the laughter. "Sit down," Devin, Todd said, pointing to the leather chair in front of his desk. I sat down, sinking into the soft leather. The room was spinning slightly. I tried to focus on the desk lamp, but it kept drifting. Todd walked around the desk and opened a drawer. He pulled out a stack of papers, thick and bound with a metal clip. He dropped them in front of me with a heavy thud. Just a few formalities before tomorrow, Todd said, his voice smooth and reassuring. Since you are going to be living here permanently, we need to get you enrolled in the International Academy, best school in the state. And we need to set up your health insurance. He flipped the pages quickly, not giving me time to read the text. Sign here, and here, and initial here. I squinted at the papers. The words were small and dancing on the page. I saw words like irrevocable trust and durable power of attorney and asset liquidation. This doesn't look like school papers, I mumbled, my tongue feeling thick in my mouth. Todd laughed, a short, sharp sound. It is just standard legal jargon, Devon. Liability waivers for the school rugby team. Insurance forms. Don't worry your pretty little head about it. That is what I am here for. I am the lawyer, remember. I read the boring stuff so you don't have to. He pressed a fountain pen into my hand. It was heavy, cold metal. Just sign at the bottom, he said. The door opened, and Bianca glided in. She smelled of champagne and expensive perfume. She walked over to me and placed her hands on my shoulders. Her touch was warm, but it felt suffocating. Is he signing the papers? She asked, looking at Todd. He is just about to, Todd said, his eyes fixed on the pen in my hand. Sign it, baby, Bianca whispered, leaning down so her lips brushed my ear. Once this is done, we can be a real family. No more courts, no more Jasmine drama. Just us. She ran her fingers through my hair. I was thinking we could go to Paris next week, she cooed. Just you and me. We can shop on the Champs-Élysées. We can eat croissants by the Eiffel Tower. You would like that, wouldn't you? Paris, I repeated. The words sounded like a dream. Yes, Paris, Bianca said. But we need to get this pesky paperwork out of the way first. Todd needs to send it off tonight so we can book the tickets. Do it for Mommy. I looked at the paper. The line for the signature was waiting. X marks the spot. X marks the end of my life with Jasmine. X marks the moment I become a product instead of a person. My hand shook. The tip of the pen hovered over the paper, leaking a tiny drop of black ink onto the white page. Paris sounds nice, I said, my voice sounding far away. It is magical, Bianca said, squeezing my shoulders. Just sign, Devon. I looked up at her. Her face was close to mine. Her blue eyes were bright and eager. She looked beautiful. She looked like the mother I had dreamed about when I was little. The mother I used to imagine would come back and save me. But then I remembered the inhaler in the gutter. I remembered the bruise on my eye. I remembered Jasmine counting quarters to buy me a pizza. Mom? I asked softly. Yes, baby, she said, smiling. I have a question. Todd sighed impatiently, checking his watch. Ask it later, Devon. We are on a schedule. No, I said, a sudden clarity cutting through the fog of the alcohol. I need to ask it now. I looked straight into Bianca's eyes. If we are going to be a family, I need to know something. Do you remember my birthday? The room went deadly silent. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner sounded like a bomb counting down. Bianca's smile faltered. Her eyes darted to the side, looking for an escape. She looked at Todd, but he was staring at her with cold fury. Of course I do, silly, she laughed nervously. It is in the fall, right? With the pumpkins. November. I stared at her. My heart broke for the final time. Not because she was wrong, but because she didn't even care enough to guess a specific date. My birthday is July 4th, I whispered. I was born on Independence Day. Jasmine used to say the fireworks were just for me. Bianca's face crumbled. She pulled back her hands, leaving my shoulders as if I burned her. Todd slammed his hand on the desk, making me jump. The glass of whiskey tipped over, spilling amber liquid all over the expensive leather blotter. Enough of this nonsense, Todd roared. His face was red, the veins in his neck bulging. The nice guy act was over. The shark was out. Sign the damn paper, Devon, he shouted, coming around the desk. You ungrateful little brat. We are offering you the world and you are testing us with trivia. Sign it or so help me God. I will make sure you never see that nurse again. I will bury her in so many lawsuits she will spend the rest of her life in court." He grabbed my hand, forcing the pen down toward the paper. His grip was painful, crushing my fingers. "Sign it," he spat. I looked at the paper. I looked at the ink spreading from the tip of the pen. I looked at Bianca, who was standing there clutching her pearls, watching her husband assault her son, and doing absolutely nothing to stop him. My hand was forced down. The metal nib touched the paper. I felt the friction of the pen against the document. I closed my eyes, and the screen of my mind went black. The heavy oak doors of courtroom 4B closed with a finality that sounded like a coffin lid slamming shut. The air inside was stale, recycled, and smelled faintly of floor wax and old desperation. I sat alone at the defendant table, clutching my purse so tightly that my fingers had gone numb. The empty chair beside me, where a high-priced lawyer should have sat, was a gaping hole in my defense. My public defender, Mr. Henderson, was currently shuffling through another file at the back of the room, clearly more interested in his next case than in saving my family. Across the aisle, the scene was entirely different. It looked like a coronation. Todd sat in the center, flanked by 3 junior associates who were busy organizing binders and whispering strategies. Bianca was next to him, wearing a demure black dress and a string of pearls, looking every inch the grieving mother who had been wronged. And there, at the end of the table, sat Devin. He was wearing the stiff suit they had bought him. He looked pale. His eyes were fixed on the wood grain of the table, and he did not look up when I whispered his name. "All rise," the bailiff bellowed. Judge Reynolds swept into the room, his black robe billowing around him. He took his seat at the high bench and looked down at us over his spectacles. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had already made up his mind before he even poured his morning coffee. "We are here to make a final ruling on the custody and guardianship of the minor Devin Miller," Judge Reynolds said, shuffling his papers. "Mr. Harrison, you may proceed." Todd stood up, buttoning his jacket with a confident snap. He walked to the center of the room, commanding the space with the ease of a man who owned the building. "Your Honor." Todd began, his voice smooth and resonant. "We believe this hearing can be concluded very quickly. Over the past 2 weeks, Devin has been reintegrated into his family home. We have provided him with a stable environment, medical care, and the educational opportunities he was previously denied." He walked back to his table and picked up a single sheet of paper. It was the document from the party, the one with the ink stain. Furthermore, Todd continued, holding the paper aloft like a trophy. "We have discussed the financial responsibilities associated with Devin's recent acquisition. Devin is a bright young man. He understands that managing $4 million is beyond his current capabilities. Last night, after a long discussion about his future, Devin voluntarily signed this power of attorney and guardianship agreement. My heart stopped beating. I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving me cold and dizzy. He signed it. My brilliant strong boy had broken." Todd handed the paper to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. "As you can see, Your Honor," Todd said, smiling at me with cold, dead eyes, "Devin has agreed to appoint me as the sole trustee of his assets until he reaches the age of 25. He has also consented to permanent physical custody with his biological mother and myself. This dispute is effectively over. The family is whole again." The judge adjusted his glasses and scrutinized the signature. He nodded slowly. "It appears to be in order. The signature matches." I couldn't breathe. I thought about the text messages. I thought about the party. I thought about the fear in Devin's eyes when I saw him at the school. "He forced him," I shouted, standing up so fast my chair scrapped loudly against the floor. "Order," the judge snapped, banging his gavel. "He forced him," I screamed, my voice cracking with hysteria. "Look at him, Your Honor, he is 16. He was coerced. Todd Harrison is a predator. He doesn't want the boy, he wants the money. Ms. Miller, sit down, or I will have you removed." The judge warned, his face turning red. "I can't sit down," I cried, tears streaming down my face. "I am his mother. Not by blood, but by every single day of his life that actually mattered. You cannot let them do this. Ask him about the party. Ask him what they made him drink. The bailiff stepped forward, placing a heavy hand on my shoulder, forcing me back into my seat. I struggled against him, but I was weak with hunger and exhaustion. I slumped into the chair, defeated, sobbing into my hands. Todd shook his head, looking at the judge with a look of long-suffering patience. Your Honor, this is exactly the kind of emotional instability we are trying to protect Devon from. It is tragic, really. She cannot accept that the boy has chosen a better life. Judge Reynolds sighed, rubbing his temples. He looked at the paper one more time, then he looked at Devon. Devon Miller, the judge said, his voice booming through the room. Please stand up. Devon slowly pushed his chair back. He stood up. He looked thinner than he had 2 weeks ago. The suit hung loosely on his frame, making him look like a child playing dress-up. Devon, the judge, continued. I have a document here that bears your signature. It grants Mr. Harrison full control over your finances and grants your biological mother full custody. Did you sign this document? Devon did not speak immediately. He reached up and adjusted his glasses. He took a deep breath. Yes, sir. Devon said, his voice quiet but steady. I signed it. I signed. A murmur went through the courtroom. Bianca let out a small gasp of relief and reached out to touch Devon's arm, but he pulled away slightly. And did you sign it of your own free will? The judge asked, leaning forward. Were you threatened or coerced in any way? I looked at Devon silently, begging him to tell the truth, begging him to be brave. Todd cleared his throat, a subtle sound that was clearly a warning. Devon looked at Todd. Then he turned his head and looked at me. For the first time in 2 weeks, our eyes met. I saw something in them that I hadn't seen before. It wasn't fear. It wasn't sadness. It was the same look he had when he was working on a complex line of code. It was calculation. Your Honor, Devon said, and his voice was louder this time, ringing clear in the silence. I signed it because I was told it was the only way to ensure my safety and my future. Todd's smile faltered slightly. The judge narrowed his eyes. However, Devon continued, reaching into his pocket. I would like to state for the record that I believe the counsel representing me, he pointed at Todd, has a significant conflict of interest. What is this? Todd snapped, stepping forward. Your Honor, the boy is confused. I am not confused, Devon said, turning to face Todd. You are representing me as my guardian, but you are also the beneficiary of the trust fees. In the coding world, we call that a fatal error. In the legal world, I believe it is called malpractice. The courtroom erupted in whispers. The judge banged his gavel. Silence. Mr. Miller, where are you going with this? Devon looked up at the high ceiling of the courtroom, then back at the judge. I am a minor, Your Honor, Devon said. But I am also the owner of a $4 million asset. And under Georgia law, that gives me the right to independent counsel to protect my estate. I do not consent to Mr. Harrison representing me. Todd laughed, a nervous, harsh sound. Independent counsel? Son, you don't have a lawyer. You don't have access to your funds. Who is going to represent you? Your aunt's public defender. Devon smiled. It was a small, cold smile. No, Devon said. I hired my own lawyer. I paid the retainer this morning using a loophole in the temporary banking restrictions that allows for emergency legal defense. He turned toward the heavy double doors at the back of the courtroom. I would like to dismiss my current legal representation effective immediately, Devon announced. My new attorney is waiting outside. The judge looked stunned. He looked at the bailiff. Open the doors. The bailiff walked to the back of the room. The heavy latch clicked. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Todd and Bianca turned around, their faces pale. I stood up, holding my breath. The doors swung open. The double doors of the courtroom swung open, and the sound of confident, rhythmic footsteps echoed against the high ceiling. Every head turned. Walking down the center aisle was a woman who radiated authority. She wore a sharp crimson suit that looked like armor and carried a briefcase that likely cost more than my entire year's salary. She did not look at the gallery. She did not look at Todd. She walked straight to the defense table where I was sitting and placed her briefcase down with a deliberate, heavy thud. I gasped. I recognized her face from the news. This was Eleanor Vance. She was not just a lawyer. She was a legal legend in Atlanta known for taking on high-profile cases involving child exploitation and winning every single time. She was the kind of attorney that billionaires hired when they were in trouble. Ms. Vance turned to the judge. Your Honor, I apologize for the dramatic entrance. I am Eleanor Vance and I have been retained to represent the interests of Devin Miller and his estate. I have filed the necessary emergency motions with the clerk this morning. Todd stood up so fast his chair nearly tipped over. His face had gone from smug to pale in the span of 10 seconds. Objection! Todd stammered, pointing a shaking finger. This is ridiculous. The boy is a minor. He has no access to funds. He cannot retain counsel. Who is paying for this? Did you put her up to this, Jasmine? Ms. Vance turned to look at Todd. Her expression was one of mild amusement, as if she were watching a toddler throw a tantrum. Mr. Harrison, she said, her voice cool and crisp. My client paid my retainer fee this morning at 8 a.m. via a direct wire transfer from a holding account that was inadvertently left unfrozen during your hasty attempt to seize his assets. It seems in your rush to claim the $4 million you forgot to lock down the dividend sub-account, a sloppy mistake for a finance lawyer. A ripple of laughter went through the courtroom. The judge hid a smile behind his hand. Ms. Vance continued. Furthermore, since my client is an emancipated minor under the laws regarding intellectual property ownership of his creation, he has every right to defend his assets from hostile takeover, even from his so-called parents. Todd looked like he was about to explode. He adjusted his tie, trying to regain his composure. This is a stalling tactic, Todd spat. It does not change the facts. The boy signed the papers. He signed the power of attorney last night. I have the document right here. He agreed to everything. Devin stood up again. He looked at me and gave a tiny nod. A signal. Your Honor, Devin said, I would like to address the signature. The judge nodded. Go ahead, son. Devin reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. Todd flinched as if he thought Devin was pulling out a weapon, but Devin only pulled out a pen. It was a sleek, heavy black fountain pen with gold trim. Mr. Harrison gave me this pen last night, Devin said, holding it up for the room to see. He told me it was a gift. He told me it was a sign of my new status as a wealthy young man. He insisted I use this specific pen to sign the documents. So what? Todd sneered. It is a Mont Blanc. It cost $500. You should be grateful, you ungrateful brat. It is not a Mont Blanc, Devin said calmly. It is a clone. I realized that when I held it. The weight balance was off, and there was a tiny seam near the clip that shouldn't be there. Devin twisted the top of the pen. A small blue light blinked on the cap. You see, Your Honor. Devin continued. I read a lot of tech blogs. This is actually a high-definition recording device disguised as a luxury pen. It is designed for corporate espionage. It starts recording the moment the nib touches paper, and it continues recording until the cap is replaced. The color drained from Bianca's face. She grabbed Todd's arm, her fingernails digging into his suit jacket. Todd froze. His eyes locked onto the small, blinking blue light. Devin walked over to the court stenographer's desk. May I connect this to the audio system, he asked. The judge leaned forward, his interest piqued. Allow it. Devin plugged the pen into the USB port of the playback system. He tapped a few keys on the console. A wave of static filled the courtroom, followed by the clear, crisp sound of clinking glasses and background jazz music. Then Todd's voice boomed through the speakers, amplified for everyone to hear. The recording started mid-conversation. Sign the damn paper, Devin, Todd's recorded voice shouted. You ungrateful little brat! We are offering you the world and you are testing us with trivia. Sign it or so help me God. I will make sure you never see that nurse again. I will bury her in so many lawsuits she will spend the rest of her life in court. I covered my mouth with my hand. Tears of relief sprang to my eyes. The jury looked shocked. But the recording was not over. There was the sound of scratching paper, the signature, then silence, then the sound of a door closing. The audio continued. It was Todd's voice again, but this time it was lower, conspiratorial. He was talking to Bianca. Finally, Todd said on the tape, "The little idiot signed it." "Is it done?" Bianca's voice asked, nervous and shaky. "It is done," Todd replied. "I will file the papers first thing in the morning. Once the judge stamps it, I am transferring the liquid assets to the offshore account in the Caymans. We will pay off the boat and the firm's debt by noon." "And what about Devin?" Bianca asked. "He thinks we are going to Paris." "Paris." Todd laughed, a cruel, dark sound. "We are not going to Paris. I found a military boarding school in Alabama. They specialize in troubled youth, strict discipline, no internet access, and no visitors. We will drop him off on Monday. We tell everyone he is studying abroad. By the time he turns 18 and gets out, the money will be long gone, and we will be untouchable." The audio cut off. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. It was the kind of silence that happens after a bomb goes off. Every single person was staring at Todd and Bianca. Bianca was trembling violently, her hand over her mouth. Todd looked like he had been struck by lightning. "You monster!" I whispered into the silence. "You were going to lock him away." Todd suddenly slammed his fist onto the table, startling everyone. "Lies!" He screamed, his face turning a deep, violent shade of red. "This is a setup. That recording is fake." He pointed a shaking finger at Devin. "He is a computer genius, remember?" Todd shouted, looking wildly at the judge. "He made this up. He used AI. It is a deep fake. You can do anything with voice cloning these days." He took samples of my voice and typed out a script. "I never said those things. I love that boy. This is a high-tech frame job." The judge frowned. He looked at the pen, then at Todd. "It is true that technology can be manipulated, Mr. Harrison. This is a serious accusation." Devin stepped forward. He did not look angry. He looked bored. He looked like a teacher explaining a simple concept to a slow student. "I expected you to say that," Devin said, "because you don't understand how technology actually works. You only understand how to steal it." Devin turned to the judge. "Your Honor, a deepfake is a surface-level imitation. It creates a WAV file. But this is a hardware recording. If you look at the metadata encoded on the pen's internal drive, you will see the digital signature of the device itself. You will see the heat mapping of the audio sensor. And most importantly, you will see the continuous timestamp that matches the security camera footage from the hallway outside his study last night." Devin looked at Todd. "You can fake a voice," Devin said coldly. "But you cannot fake the encryption key of a physical device without rewriting the firmware, which takes days. This recording was created 12 hours ago. I haven't had the time or the equipment to forge it. It is raw audio, and it is admissible." Ms. Vance stepped in, her voice like a closing steel trap. "Your Honor, we request that the court take custody of this device immediately and submit it to the Forensic IT Department for verification. And in light of this evidence, which suggests conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement, and child endangerment, we move that Mr. Harrison be removed as guardian immediately." Todd looked around the room. He saw the disgust on the jury's faces. He saw the anger in the judge's eyes. He saw the bailiff moving casually toward the exit, blocking the path. He looked at Bianca, but she had pulled away from him, putting distance between them as if he were contagious. "It is a lie," Todd whispered, but the fight had gone out of his voice. He slumped into his chair, pulling at his collar, which suddenly seemed much too tight. The judge glared at Todd over his spectacles. "Mr. Bailiff, seize that pen," the judge ordered. "And Mr. Harrison, I suggest you do not leave the building. We are going to take a 1-hour recess to verify this evidence." If what I just heard is authentic, you will not be needing a custody lawyer. You will be needing a criminal defense attorney. Devin turned to me. He didn't smile. He just winked behind his thick glasses, and for the first time in 2 weeks I breathed. I really breathed. The air tasted like justice. The courtroom was in chaos. The forensic expert had just marched out with the spy pen sealing Todd's fate, but the drama was far from over. I watched as Bianca physically recoiled from her husband. She stood up and smoothed her black dress, her face twisting into a mask of horrified innocence. She looked at the judge with tears streaming down her face, and they looked so real that for a second, even I was confused. "Your Honor," Bianca sobbed, her voice trembling with perfect vibrato. "I had no idea. You have to believe me. I did not know my husband was planning to send my son away. I thought we were going to Paris. I thought we were finally going to be a family. Todd manipulated me, just like he manipulated Devin. I am a victim here too." She turned to Devin, reaching out a hand that shook delicately. "Baby, please," she pleaded. "Mommy didn't know. You know I would never hurt you. I came back for you. I fought for you because I love you. Do not let Todd's crimes destroy what we have built." The courtroom fell silent. It was a compelling performance. Bianca was beautiful, and she knew exactly how to weaponize her tears. I saw a few jurors soften. I saw the doubt creeping back into the judge's eyes. She was distancing herself from the sinking ship, and she was going to survive. She was going to walk away with shared custody and maybe even access to the money if she played her cards right. I felt a surge of nausea. She was going to get away with it. Then Devin cleared his throat. It was a small sound, but in the quiet courtroom it sounded like a gavel strike. He walked back to the AV console where his phone was still connected. He did not look at Bianca. He looked at the screen. "You are very good at crying," Devin said, his voice flat and emotionless. "You almost had me fooled too. For a minute back at the house I actually thought you wanted to take me to the Eiffel Tower." "Devin." "Please," Bianca cried. "Stop this. Let us go home." "We are not going home," Devin said. "And you are not a victim. You are not a depressed mother who made a mistake. You are a businesswoman who made a bad investment 10 years ago and is trying to recoup her losses now." He tapped the screen of his phone. When I recovered my Aunt Jasmine's old email account to find the custody paperwork, I found something else Devin announced to the room. I found a backup folder from her old cloud storage. It contained all her voicemails from 10 years ago. He looked at me. "Dee Dee never told me this existed. She protected me from it. But I think it is time we all heard the truth about why you left." "Devin." "Stop!" Bianca shrieked, her mask slipping for the first time. Devin pressed play. The audio that filled the courtroom was not the voice of a scared young girl. It was the voice of a woman who sounded annoyed. It was the voice of someone complaining about a broken appliance, not a human being. The timestamp on the screen read June 4th, 2014. 3:15 a.m. "Jasmine, pick up the phone." The voice on the recording was unmistakably Bianca's, but it was harsh and slurring slightly. "I am done. Do you hear me? I am done with this thing." There was a sound of a baby crying in the background. My heart broke all over again, recognizing the sound of Devin's colicky wail from 10 years ago. "Listen to him." The recording continued. "He never shuts up. He is ruining my life, Jasmine. I haven't slept in 3 days. I have bags under my eyes. Do you know how much money I spend on my skin? I have a casting call in Los Angeles next week and I look like a zombie because of this parasite." I heard gasps from the jury box. Bianca stood frozen, her face draining of all color. "Come get him." The recording went on. "I mean it. I am leaving him on the porch. If you are not here in 20 minutes, I am putting him in the dumpster out back." "I am not joking, Jasmine. I am not ruining my body and my career for a mistake. Come pick up your trash or the garbage truck will get him in the morning." The recording ended with the violent sound of the phone being slammed down. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. It was the silence of absolute horror. I buried my face in my hands and sobbed. I remembered that night. I remembered the terror in my chest as I drove 90 miles an hour to get to her apartment, praying I wasn't too late. I remembered finding Devin in his carrier on the concrete steps, screaming his lungs out, while the house behind him was dark and empty. I had never told anyone the details. I had never told anyone about the dumpster threat. I wanted Devin to believe his mother was sick, not evil. I looked up through my tears. The judge looked physically ill. He had taken off his glasses and was staring at Bianca with an expression of pure revulsion. Bianca stood alone in the center of the room. The grieving mother act was gone. The victim card had been burned to ash. She looked naked in her cruelty. "There is no postpartum depression in that tape," Judge Reynolds said, his voice low and dangerous. "There is no confusion. There is only vanity and malice. You threatened to throw a human infant into a dumpster because he was ruining your complexion." Bianca looked around the room frantically. She saw the disgust on every face. She saw Todd looking at her with shock, realizing that even he hadn't known the depth of her coldness. She saw the end of her social standing. She saw the $4 million evaporating into thin air. She snapped. The transformation was instant and terrifying. Her face twisted into a snarl. Her hands curled into claws. She didn't look at the judge. She didn't look at Devin. She turned on me. "You bitch!" she screamed, lunging toward my table. The bailiff moved quickly, stepping in between us, but Bianca didn't stop screaming. She strained against his grip, spitting the words at me. "You set me up. You saved that tape. You kept it for 10 years just waiting for this moment, didn't you? You jealous, miserable cow." She wasn't crying anymore. She was roaring. "You stole him from me," she shrieked, her voice echoing off the walls. "I gave him to you to watch. I was going to come back when I was famous. But you turned him against me. You poisoned him. You made him hate his own mother." She pointed a shaking finger at Devin. "And you," she spat. "You ungrateful little brat. I gave you life. I gave you those blue eyes. You are nothing without me. You think you are so smart with your little computer. You belong to me. That money belongs to me. It is my compensation for carrying you for 9 months. It is my payment for the stretch marks." Bianca silenced. The judge bellowed, banging his gavel so hard I thought the handle would break. But she couldn't stop. The years of entitlement, the years of narcissism were pouring out of her like venom. "I should have thrown you in the dumpster," she screamed at Devin. "I should have done it. Then I wouldn't be here in this cheap court with these cheap people. I would be in Paris." The bailiff finally managed to handcuff her. He forced her down into her chair, but she kept trashing, fighting like a wild animal caught in a trap. I sat there trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer magnitude of the revelation. She had finally said it. She had finally admitted that Devin was not a son to her. He was a transaction. He was a regret. Devin stood still at the front of the room. He didn't look hurt. He looked relieved. He looked like someone who had been carrying a heavy backpack for 16 years and had finally set it down. He walked over to his phone and unplugged it. The screen went black, cutting off the connection to the past. "I think we have heard enough, Your Honor," Devin said calmly. Judge Reynolds looked at Bianca, who was now panting and glaring at the floor, her hair messed and her dignity gone. "I agree," the judge said. "I have heard more than enough." He turned to me. "Ms. Miller, I owe you an apology," the judge said softly. "And I believe the state of Georgia owes you a great debt." He picked up his gavel. "Mr. Harrison and Mrs. Harrison, you came into my courtroom seeking guardianship. You claimed you wanted to protect this boy. Instead, you have provided the court with irrefutable evidence of your own moral bankruptcy." The judge looked at the papers on his desk and ripped the temporary custody order in half. The sound of the tearing paper was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. "The court finds that Bianca Harrison is unfit to parent, not due to illness but due to character. Her parental rights are hereby terminated, effective immediately. Bianca let out a wail that sounded less like a human cry and more like a banshee losing its prey. Todd slumped forward, burying his head in his arms, knowing that his financial crimes were about to be exposed next. I looked at Devin. He walked down the aisle toward me. He didn't look at his biological mother, who was being restrained by 2 officers. He didn't look at his stepfather, who was shaking with fear. He walked straight to me. He sat down in the empty chair beside me and took my hand. His hand was warm. His grip was strong. "Let us go home, Dee Dee," he whispered. I squeezed his hand back. "Yes, baby. Let us go home." But as the judge prepared to read the final sentencing for Todd, I knew the story wasn't quite over. We had won the freedom. But there was still the matter of the money. And Devin had one last surprise left for the people who had tried to sell him. You would think that hearing a recording of his own voice conspiring to commit fraud would be enough to silence a man like Todd Harrison. You would think that seeing his wife handcuffed and disgraced would make him crumble. But Todd was not just a criminal, he was a narcissist. And narcissists do not know when to fold their cards, even when the game is already over. The judge was reaching for his gavel to issue the final orders when Todd stood up. He adjusted his suit jacket, which was now wrinkled and damp with sweat. He smoothed his hair. He looked around the courtroom with a frantic, desperate energy that was terrifying to watch. "Wait, Your Honor." Todd shouted, his voice cracking slightly. "Just wait a minute." The judge paused, his gavel hovering in the air. "Mr. Harrison, unless you are about to confess to the crimes we just heard on that tape, I suggest you sit down and remain silent until the police arrive." Todd shook his head violently. "No, Your Honor. Listen to me. The criminal allegations are a separate matter. We can litigate the validity of that recording later. But right now we are in family court. We are discussing guardianship. And the fact remains that I am the only person in this room with the financial acumen to manage a multi-million-dollar estate." He pointed a shaking finger at me. "Look at her." Todd sneered, his lip curling in disgust. "She is a nurse. She makes $40,000 a year. She drives a car that is held together by duct tape. You cannot seriously intend to hand over $4.2 million to a woman who probably balances her checkbook on a napkin. It is irresponsible. Even if I am removed as guardian, she is not qualified. The court needs to appoint a professional trustee." I felt a flash of old anger, but before I could speak, I felt a hand on my arm. It was Devin. He was looking at Todd with an expression I had never seen before. It was not fear, and it was not anger. It was pity. He stood up slowly. He walked around the table and stood in the center of the aisle facing Todd. He looked like David facing Goliath, but this time David didn't have a slingshot. He had a microphone. "You still don't get it, do you, Todd?" Devin asked, his voice quiet but echoing clearly in the silent room. Todd scoffed. "Get what?" "That you are a naive child who is about to be taken advantage of by a woman who is drowning in debt." Devin smiled. It was a dry, humorless smile. "You saw the email from Tech Global," Devin said. "You saw the headline, Acquisition of Edu Connect Platform for $4.2 million. And your eyes turned into slot machines. You started calculating how many boats you could buy. You started planning your retirement." "That is my job," Todd snapped. "I am a finance lawyer. I look at the bottom line." "But you are a bad lawyer," Devin said, "because you didn't read the contract. You didn't read the terms of the deal. You were so blinded by the number that you didn't look at the structure." Devin turned to the judge. "Your Honor, Mr. Harrison seems to be under the impression that there is $4 million in cash sitting in a bank account waiting to be spent. He thinks he can access that money today to pay off his debts." The judge looked intrigued. "Is that not the case, young man?" "No, sir," Devin said, shaking his head. Devin turned back to Todd, who was now looking confused. "Todd, in the tech world, when a startup is acquired, the payout structure is rarely 100% cash." Devin explained, his voice taking on the tone of a lecturer. The deal with Tech Global is structured as 80% stock and 20% cash, and that stock is subject to a vesting schedule. Todd blinked. Vesting schedule. Yes, Devon continued. It is called a 5-year cliff. The $3.5 million in stock is locked. It is held in escrow. It releases in increments of 20% per year starting 1 year from today. But there is a catch. The stock only vests if the primary developer stays on as a consultant to ensure the code is integrated properly. Devon took a step closer to Todd. If I quit Todd, or if, say, I am sent away to a military boarding school in Alabama where I have no internet access and cannot work, then the contract is voided. The stock is forfeited. It goes back to Tech Global. The color drained from Todd's face. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. So you see, Devon said, if you had succeeded, if you had locked me away, you would have woken up on Monday morning to find that the account was empty. You were fighting to steal a ghost. Todd gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. But the cash, he stammered. The 20%. That is still $800,000. That is liquid. I can still manage that. Devon laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. Oh, right, the cash, Devon said. The initial signing bonus. He looked at me and winked again. About that, Devon said. You are right, Todd. A minor cannot hold that much cash. And I agree that I am just a kid. I wrote the code, sure, but a platform like EduConnect is not just code. It is a business. It is an intellectual property. Devon walked back to our table and picked up a document from Ms. Vance's briefcase. When I started building this app 3 years ago, I was 13, Devon said. I was using my aunt's laptop. I was using her electricity. I was eating the food she paid for by working double shifts. But more importantly, the idea came from her. She was the one who came home crying because her patient's grandson failed algebra because he couldn't afford a tutor. She told me there should be a way to connect people who want to help. Devon held up the document. So, when I incorporated the LLC to sell the app, I didn't list myself as the founder, Devon announced. I listed myself as the lead developer. A contractor. He pointed at me. Jasmine Miller is the founder and CEO of EduConnect, Devon declared. The intellectual property rights belong to her. The copyright belongs to her. And that check for $800,000. It didn't go to my trust fund, Todd. It was wired directly to her business account this morning. The entire courtroom gasped. I sat there stunned. I looked at Devon. He had never told me this. He had done it all in secret, protecting me just as I had protected him. Todd looked at me. He looked at the woman he had called a poor nurse, the woman he had mocked for her old car and her small apartment. He realized in that moment that I was standing on a mountain of gold, and he was standing in a pit of mud. You mean, Todd whispered, his voice shaking. The money. It is hers. Every cent, Devon said. I just work for her. The reality hit Todd like a physical blow. His knees gave out and he collapsed into his chair. He had committed fraud. He had kidnapped a child. He had destroyed his reputation. He had lost his wife. And he had done it all to gain control over a boy who owned absolutely nothing. He had chased the golden goose only to find out that the goose was just a decoy and the gold was safe in the hands of the farmer he had tried to rob. Bianca, who was still weeping quietly in the corner, looked up. She looked at me. The realization dawned on her face too. If she had just been kind, if she had just been a sister, she would be celebrating a multi-million-dollar victory right now. Instead, she was heading to a jail cell. Ms. Vance stood up and smoothed her skirt. Your Honor, I believe this concludes the matter of the estate, she said. Mr. Harrison is fighting for guardianship of a minor with 0 assets. The funds he wishes to embezzle are legally the property of Ms. Miller, who is a competent adult. The judge looked at Todd. He looked at the broken man slumped in the chair. A smile tugged at the corner of the judge's mouth. It seems you have been outmaneuvered, Mr. Harrison, Judge Reynolds said. The judge raised his gavel one last time. The petition for guardianship is dismissed with prejudice. Full custody remains with Ms. Jasmine Miller. And Mr. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Harrison to the holding cell to join his wife. I believe the district attorney is waiting downstairs with a warrant for wire fraud. Todd didn't fight as the bailiff pulled him up. He looked like a zombie. He walked past our table, his eyes empty. He looked at Devin one last time. "You played me?" Todd whispered. Devin didn't blink. "Game over," he said. As they dragged Todd and Bianca out of the courtroom, I sat in, the silence feeling the weight of the last 2 weeks lift off my chest. I looked at my nephew. My son. He wasn't just a genius coder, he was a protector. He sat down next to me and loosened his tie. "Is it true?" I asked him, my voice trembling. "Did you really put it all in my name?" Devin shrugged. "You invested in me when I was worth nothing, Dee. It is only fair that you get the return on investment now that I am worth something." I pulled him into a hug, burying my face in his neck. I didn't care about the money. I really didn't. But knowing that he had chosen me, that he had secured our future, so that no one could ever look down on us again, was the greatest gift he could have given. But the story wasn't quite finished. We had the money. We had the freedom. Now it was time to step into the sunlight and show the world exactly what a poor nurse and an abandoned boy could do. The sound of the gavel striking the wood block was the most beautiful music I had ever heard. It echoed through the courtroom, final and absolute, shattering the tension that had held my lungs in a vice grip for 2 weeks. Judge Reynolds did not mince words. His voice was stern and carried the weight of a man who had seen enough greed to last a lifetime. "The petition for guardianship filed by Mr. and Mrs. Harrison is denied with prejudice," the judge declared. "Full and permanent legal custody of Devin Miller is awarded to Miss Jasmine Miller. Furthermore, given the evidence of attempted fraud and the disturbing nature of the audio recordings admitted into evidence, I am issuing an immediate protective order. Neither Mr. nor Mrs. Harrison are to come within 500 feet of the minor or Miss Miller." I felt Devin's hand squeeze mine. We had done it. The nightmare was over. But for Todd Harrison, the nightmare was just beginning. Before Todd could even slump back into his chair, the heavy double doors at the back of the courtroom swung open again. This time it was not a lawyer who walked in. It was 4 officers wearing windbreakers with the words "Economic Crimes Unit" emblazoned on the back. They moved with a synchronized efficiency that was terrifying to watch. "Todd Harrison," one of the officers announced, his voice booming. "You are under arrest." Todd stood up, his face turning the color of old ash. Under arrest for what? He stammered, his arrogance finally replaced by pure panic. "For wire fraud, tax evasion, and money laundering." The officer listed the charges as he pulled a pair of steel handcuffs from his belt. "We have been monitoring your offshore activities for months, Mr. Harrison. Attempting to move $4 million into a shell account in the Caymans this morning was the final flag we needed. You also have outstanding debts totaling $3 million, which you attempted to cover with fraudulent loans." Todd looked around the room frantically. He looked at the judge, who merely turned his page. He looked at his junior associates, who were backing away from him as if he were radioactive. "Bianca, call my partner," Todd yelled, as the officer spun him around and slammed the cuffs onto his wrists. "Call the firm, get me bail." One of the associates spoke up, his voice trembling. "Sir, the partners just called. You have been fired. The firm is cooperating with the investigation. They are freezing your personal assets as we speak." Todd let out a sound that was half sob and half scream as the officers dragged him toward the side exit. He kicked and struggled, a man who had built a kingdom on sand, watching the tide finally come in. I watched him go and felt nothing. No pity, no anger, just a cold indifference. He was a predator who had finally met a bigger predator, the law. The courtroom began to clear. Ms. Vance, my brilliant lawyer, began packing up her briefcase. "We will have the final paperwork for you by tomorrow, Jasmine," she said, smiling warmly. "Go home. Celebrate. You earned it." I thanked her and stood up. Devin put his arm around my shoulders. He seemed taller suddenly. The weight of the secret he had been carrying was gone, and he looked like a regular teenage boy again. "Let us get pizza, Didi," he said. "I am starving." We turned to leave, walking down the center aisle toward the freedom of the afternoon sun. But we didn't make it to the door. "Jasmine, wait." The voice was shrill and desperate. I stopped and turned slowly. Bianca was standing by the defendant's table. She was alone. Her lawyers had left the moment the check from Todd's firm bounced. Her husband was in a holding cell. She looked around the empty courtroom, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. I just stared at her. I didn't say a word. She ran toward us, her high heels clicking frantically on the marble floor. She stopped a few feet away, looking at me and then at Devin. She tried to smile, but it was a broken, twisted thing. "Jasmine, please," she gasped, reaching out a hand. "You have to help me. They are sealing the house. Todd told me before they took him away. The feds are seizing everything. The house, the cars, the accounts. I have nothing." She took a step closer, tears streaming down her face. And this time, I knew they were real tears, because they were tears of self-pity. "I have nowhere to go." "Jasmine," Bianca sobbed. "My credit cards are declaimed. My friends won't answer my calls. I am your sister. You can't leave me on the street." I looked at the woman standing before me. This was the woman who had left a baby on a doorstep. This was the woman who had called my home a slum. This was the woman who had thrown an asthma inhaler into the gutter because she thought breathing was less important than aesthetics. "You are not my sister," I said, my voice calm and steady. "My sister died 10 years ago, when she chose vanity over humanity. You are just a stranger who shares my DNA." Bianca fell to her knees. She grabbed the hem of my scrub pants, the same pants she had mocked for being cheap. "Please, Jasmine," she wailed, "just for a few weeks. Until I get back on my feet. I will sleep on the couch. I will help with the cleaning. I will be good. I promise. We are family. Blood is thicker than water, right?" I looked down at her. I remembered the last 10 years. I remembered the double shifts. I remembered the lonely nights. I remembered the fear in Devin's eyes when she tried to take him. I reached into my purse. My fingers brushed against the worn leather of my wallet. I pulled it out. Inside were the same 3 bills that had been there 2 weeks ago. 2 $10 bills and 1 $20. $40. It was the money I had saved to fix my car. It was the money I had almost used to buy groceries before my world fell apart. I pulled the bills out. They were wrinkled and soft with age. I looked at the money. Then I looked at Devin. He nodded, understanding exactly what I was doing. I bent down and took Bianca's hand. She looked up at me, hope lighting up her tear-stained face. She thought I was going to help her up. She thought I was going to hug her. Instead, I pressed the $40 into her palm and closed her fingers around it. "Here," I said. "What is this?" she whispered, looking at the crumbled bills. "It is bus fare," I said, standing up. Bianca stared at the money as if it were an alien object. $40, she stammered. "Jasmine, I can't live on $40. I lived on it," I said coldly. "I raised a child on it. I built a home on it. If I could do that, surely a woman of your superior talents can figure it out." I stepped back, creating a distance between us that would never be bridged again. "Take the bus, Bianca. Go to a shelter. Go to Hollywood. I don't care where you go. Just don't ever come back to my door, because next time I won't be opening it. I will be calling the police for trespassing." "But Jasmine," she cried, reaching out again. "Goodbye, Bianca." I turned my back on her. I took Devin's arm and we walked toward the heavy oak doors. Behind us, I could hear her sobbing. I could hear her screaming my name. But the sounds were fading, getting smaller and smaller until they were just background noise. We pushed open the doors and stepped out into the hallway. The air outside the courtroom was cool and fresh. It didn't smell like perfume or greed. It smelled like rain and asphalt and freedom. I looked at my empty wallet and smiled. I was broke again. Technically, I had $0 in my purse, but as I walked out of that courthouse with my arm linked through my son's arm, I knew the truth. I was the richest woman in the world. "Ready for pizza?" Devin asked, adjusting his glasses. I laughed. "I am buying," I said. "Or rather, you are buying since you are the tycoon now." Devin grinned. "Deal. But you are driving. I still don't have my license." We walked out into the sunlight, leaving the shadows of the past locked behind us in the courthouse forever. The leather steering wheel of the brand-new white Range Rover felt cool and solid under my palms. There was no shaking. There was no rattling sound coming from the engine. There was only the smooth purr of a machine that worked perfectly. I turned the corner onto Willow Creek Lane and pressed the button on the visor. The wrought iron gates swung open silently, welcoming me home. It had been exactly 30 days since the judge banged his gavel and ended the war. 30 days since Todd was dragged away in handcuffs, and Bianca was left sobbing on the sidewalk with $40 in her hand. In those 30 days, my entire world had decompressed. The constant pressure in my chest, the anxiety that woke me up at 3 in the morning, the fear of the landlord's text messages, it was all gone. I parked the car in the driveway. I sat there for a moment, just looking at the house. It wasn't a mansion like Todd's cold white tomb. It was a villa. It had warm yellow stucco walls and a terracotta roof. It had a garden filled with blooming hydrangeas and a wraparound porch that begged for rocking chairs and iced tea. It was the kind of home I used to look at in magazines while I was eating my lunch in the hospital break room. I bought it with the first dividend payout from the vested stock. It was paid for in cash, no mortgage, no banks, no fear. I stepped out of the car. My heels clicked on the stone path, but this time the sound didn't make me feel like I was rushing. It sounded like confidence. I walked through the front door into the foyer where the sunlight was pouring in through the skylights. The air smelled of fresh paint and lavender, not antiseptic and mold. "Devin." I called out, my voice echoing slightly in the high-ceilinged hallway. "I am in the lab, Dee." His voice floated back from the converted sunroom. I walked toward the back of the house. We had turned the largest room on the ground floor into what Devin called his command center. I stood in the doorway and leaned against the frame, watching him. Devin was moving around the room with an energy I hadn't seen in years. He was unboxing new servers, connecting thick cables to a wall of monitors that looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. He wasn't wearing his gray hoodie. He was wearing a fitted t-shirt and jeans. He looked taller. His shoulders were back. And most importantly, his breathing was silent. The high-quality air filtration system we installed meant his asthma hadn't flared up once since we moved in. He spun around in his ergonomic chair and grinned when he saw me. "What do you think?" he asked, gesturing to the wall of screens. "I finally have enough processing power to run the new update for EduConnect. We are expanding to 3 more states next week." "It looks amazing, baby," I said, walking over to ruffle his hair. "But don't work too hard. It is Saturday. You are supposed to be a teenager. Go skateboard. Go play video games." Devin laughed. "I am playing Dee. This is play for me." He stopped and looked at me. He studied my face. "You look nice," he said. "Really nice." I walked over to the large mirror hanging on the wall. I looked at the reflection. For 10 years I had avoided mirrors because they only showed me what I was losing. They showed me the gray hairs, the dark circles, the worry lines that were etching themselves into my skin. But today, the woman in the mirror looked different. I was wearing a soft floral sundress that showed off my arms. I had put on a little bit of mascara and a touch of lipstick. My hair was down loose and shiny. "I am 35 years old," I whispered to my reflection. It used to feel like an expiration date. It used to feel like I was already old, like my life was over before it had even begun. But standing here in this sunlit room, I realized that 35 wasn't the end. It was the prime. I was young. I was healthy. I was free. Devin cleared his throat. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a sleek white envelope. "I got you something," he said, holding it out. I frowned. "Devin, you already bought me the car." And the house. You don't need to buy me anything else. Just open it, he said. I took the envelope. It was heavy cardstock. I opened the flap and pulled out the paper inside. My hands flew to my mouth. It was a plane ticket. First class. One way. Destination Denpasar, Bali. Devon, I gasped. What is this? He stood up and walked over to me. He took my hands in his. You told me once that when you were 25 you wanted to go to Bali, Devon said softly. You said you wanted to see the temples and eat fruit on the beach. You said you gave that up to change my diapers. I felt tears prick my eyes, but they were happy tears. That was a lifetime ago, baby. I can't go to Bali. Who will cook for you? Who will make sure you take your vitamins? Devon rolled his eyes playfully. Dee Dee, I am 16. I run a multi-million-dollar company. I think I can microwave a burrito. Besides, I hired someone. You hired someone, I asked, Mrs. Gable Devon said. The nice lady from the church who makes the peach cobbler. I hired her as a housekeeper and cook. She starts Monday. She is going to stay here and make sure I don't starve. He squeezed my hands. You are fired, Dee Dee, he said, smiling. Fired. Yes, Devon said firmly. You are fired from being a full-time mom. You are retired. You did the job. You saved me. You raised me. You fought for me. And you won. Now it is time for you to go be Jasmine. Not Devon's aunt. Not the nurse. Just Jasmine. He pointed to the ticket. The flight leaves on Tuesday. I booked you a villa with a private pool. Do not come back until you have a tan and a boyfriend. I laughed, a sound that bubbled up from deep in my chest. I pulled him into a hug, holding him tight. He was taller than me now. I rested my head on his shoulder. Thank you, I whispered into his shirt. Thank you for giving me my life back. No, Dee Dee, he said, resting his chin on my head. You gave me mine first. I pulled away and wiped my eyes. Okay. Bali. I am doing it. I turned and walked toward the French doors that led to the patio. I stepped out onto the warm stone. The sun was setting, painting the Atlanta sky in shades of purple and gold. It was the same sky I had looked at from the window of the dialysis clinic, but from here it looked completely different. I walked to the edge of the balcony and looked down at the garden. I thought about Bianca. I wondered where she was right now. Probably on a bus somewhere, blaming the world for her problems, clutching that $40 like it was a lifeline. I felt a moment of sadness for her, but it passed quickly, like a cloud moving over the sun. She had chosen her path, and I had chosen mine. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the sweet scent of jasmine flowers from the garden below. It was funny. My name was Jasmine, but for a long time I had felt like a weed struggling to grow through cracked concrete. Now I finally had room to bloom. People always say that blood is thicker than water. They use it to trap you. They use it to make you tolerate disrespect and abuse because you share a last name. But standing here watching the sun go down on my old life, I know the truth. Sometimes water is better. Water cleanses, water heals, water is life. And sometimes the blood is toxic. Family isn't about who you are born to. It is about who stays when the house is falling down. It is about who holds your hand in the courtroom. It is about who loves you enough to set you free. I looked back into the house where Devon was laughing at something on his screen. That is my family, I said to the wind. The screen fades to black. This story serves as a powerful reminder that true family is defined by sacrifice, not just DNA. While Bianca and Todd viewed Devon as a financial asset, Jasmine saw him as a human being worthy of love, even when he had nothing. It teaches us that greed is a blinding force that often leads to its own destruction, while genuine selfless love plays the long game and wins. Ultimately, we learn that the richest people aren't those with the biggest bank accounts, but those who have someone willing to stand by them when the world turns its back. If this story of justice and resilience resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more. Have you ever found your true family outside of your blood relatives? I would love to read your story in the comments below.